Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, managing editor of Canada's podcast. Joining me today on Calgary's podcast is Bryce Weeks, who is founder of Clear Float Spa in Calgary. Thanks for joining us today, Bryce.
Great to be here.
All right, tell me just a little bit, first off, Bryce, what Clear Float Spa is and what you do.
Sure. So Clear Float Spa is it's a spa, and what we focus on really is stillness and meditation. So we have four float pods and one infrared sauna. Infrared sauna is fairly straightforward. I can talk a little bit about the science behind that. And then we have four float pods. And essentially what float pods are, or float therapy is essentially you enter into an environment filled with 8 to 10 inches of water, filled with 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt. So it's 4 times more dense than the Dead Sea. So essentially what you do is you float completely weightlessly in a dark environment. You can turn on the light if you so choose as well, but essentially you're in complete darkness and floating in that water. And what that does is it activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which essentially deactivates your fight or flight response. And this helps you to naturally slip into a meditative state. So by removing all external stimuli, your brain can finally go, and kind of take that breath that we're, constantly overwhelmed with social media, technology, brand messaging, and it kind of gives you that moment to come back down and enter into more of a grounded, centered stillness state.
How did you start this?
So I meditated a lot in my early 20s and found it literally, well, completely life changing. I was meditating for half an hour in the morning, half an hour in the evening, and just achieving really, really intense, blissful, great states. And I was blessed enough to have kind of a community around me and some great people in my life that were also going through that in my early 20s. And then in my kind of later 20s, so I've been in background as in sales and marketing. And as I continued to grow in that world, I just kind of became, I guess, very disconnected. I was like, what am I doing here? What am I really selling? I was working for big corporations. And finally, I came across float therapy and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a therapy that can help people. It can bring meditation into people's lives, and all my skill sets I can use in my background in marketing and branding to actually create a community for people, because meditation is very much a solo journey, but it's great to have people around you that are going through the same things that you're going through, and you can share with that in a community environment. So this brought all of the best technologies together for me to use my skill sets.
So I'm curious, what first brought you to meditation in general? Like something happened in your life, or it was just a long journey towards it? What brought you to that
Yeah.
point?
Well, I think it was just a combination of a lot of things. I mean, I was a very hyperactive child, I guess. I think undiagnosed ADHD, lots of people throw that term around, but I was a
Yeah.
very active child. I'd always be, losing my keys, misplacing my keys, and I just wanted to be a little bit more still. And I decided to just try meditation. And I was like, I'm just going to sit for 20 minutes every day for 3 weeks, and I'm going to see if anything happens. I'm like, I just made that small dedication. And I think it was around, or I think it was 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I was like, oh, that was okay, but I didn't really feel it. I was like, I'm going to do one more week. And then, 2 days into that third week, I remember just having one moment where I was just like, no thought. And I just got hooked. I was like, wow, that was such a unique grounding. I was like, I didn't know that that was out there. And then I just went down, an intense journey and continuing to do it. And it just brought me so much more peace and
Uh,
um, calmness in my life.
So I'm just curious. Obviously, as you said, you're a very active child, and then obviously living in the and working in the business environment. What was it like the first couple of times you tried to meditate? Could you sit still?
It was hard. No, I mean, my mind was going the whole time. All I said was, I'm just going to sit still for 20 minutes. So I just wasn't going to move. And my thoughts were just going. And, I just used a strategy. Just every time that I had a thought, I would just say thinking and then kind of come back to my breath. And literally, I was sitting there for 20 minutes just going thinking, thinking, thinking. So
Yeah.
I was constantly thinking, but I was just bringing an awareness to it. So it was very, very challenging for me. But like I said, after that 3 week, when I just had the one moment of that stillness, I was like, wow, okay, there's something here. And then I continued to practice more and more. And during that really intense period in my early 20s when I was doing a lot, I was having incredible, calmness.
Okay. Now, what about your first time you experienced a clear float? What was that like?
So my first ever float um, was just mind blowing. I mean, it was for me, it was like meditation on steroids because you're removing, when you're sitting there in your own house, you still hear, pipes or you just
Yeah.
hear stuff and it's easy to get distracted. Or you think like, oh, I could turn on the TV, or you're just close to things that can distract you. And in a float, you are removed from all of that. I mean, you are in a pod, in naked or in a swimming suit, and there's nothing around you. You can't go get your phone. So it just brings that extra level of stillness to it.
Yeah.
And when you get really, really silent, some people are worried about the silence, but your thoughts, you kind of get to the end of your thoughts. They just feel a little bit louder, which brings more awareness to them, and then they dissipate so much easier. So I was just blown away. I came out and I was like, not only is it great for your mind, but then my body, I mean, you're completely weightless, so it increases your circulation. And I just felt like I had a massage for my brain and my body.
Yeah. So, the people that you see through your spa, give me a sense of the kind of people are they? Male, female, young, old. What kind of walks of life are they from?
I mean, every walk of life, which is the neatest part. I mean, we have some people who have been meditating for 30, 40 years and have, been to Tibet and meditated with Buddhist monks. Then we have the 20-year-old that's literally like, I just want to try this. It seems like something that would benefit me. We have athletes. We have lots of some Calgary Flames come in, some NHL hockey players come in. We have lots of all different walks of life, some MMA fighters, lots
Oh,
of moms who are expecting because it can help during pregnancy to help alleviate pain on the lower back, people with chronic pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia. It really helps with
uh,
fibromyalgia.
yeah. So tell
Yeah,
me,
so it's very diverse.
when you look at, yeah, you mentioned this about how all the noise that we have in the world today, and this baby is with us ever, like attached to our hips, oh, literally, like almost 24/7. Uh, is this, whether it's meditation or what you do, is it kind of desperately needed in our society today?
I mean, in my belief, my very strong belief, it's the same as exercise.
Yeah.
If you're not doing it nowadays, uh, I think you can see the rise of anxiety, the rise of depression, especially post-pandemic. To be grounded and to not get caught up in all of that and the scrolling and this, there's just so much of it. I think if you aren't exercising, eating well, sleeping well, and some form of mindfulness or meditation, and there's so many different kinds, you don't need to get caught up in the sitting in a float pod, or you can do walking meditations. I think if you don't have some form of mindfulness, that anxiety can creep in very easily. So I think it's just as important as a balanced diet and exercise.
So tell me in terms of the meditation aspect of everything, how that has been helpful to you on the business side of things, on running and operating a business.
Oh, I think immensely. I mean, everyone says starting a business is the most stressful thing you can do next to having a child or moving.
Yeah,
And although it was stressful for sure when I was starting it up, but I used floating a lot, and it just felt fairly, I don't want to say easy, but I was just calm when things were happening. It was just like, okay, what challenge do I have to deal with, and we would continue to move on and move forward. Um, it, yeah, I don't think it becomes. It's just such a key part of my life,
yeah.
especially when I was opening up. And of course, sometimes I get distracted. I don't meditate as often, and I need to come back to it. Um, but when I'm meditating heavily, there is no question. Things come at me, and it's like, oh, that's interesting. I guess I'll have to deal with that challenge, as opposed to just reacting. And your cortisol spikes up, and you start getting really stressed, and you basically get elevated like you're fighting a bear. When nowadays we don't need to fight bears, and yet we're releasing cortisol as if we're fighting bears. We get an email and we get stressed and get all amped up. When I think we're in a pretty safe environment, we just need to be a little bit more mindful of that.
Yeah. Now, when you started, oh, sorry, when did you start this, by the way? What year?
So 7 years ago, next month. So May 15th is our 7 year anniversary.
You said, okay, and this will probably air after that. So just, okay, May, okay. So in May, at 7 years ago, uh, when you first started as a business owner, what were some of the major challenges or biggest challenges you faced?
Um, oh my goodness. There were a lot. Um, I
Because
don't know. I mean,
you hadn't been a business owner prior to that, right? You were just
no.
working for the man. So,
Yes, I was indeed working for the man for sure. I think, you know, the getting, banks on board to believe in me, especially when I hadn't done it before, I
yeah,
think was a challenge, and the confidence to be, you know, this, especially that a bank is going to give me money to start up a spa where you do nothing, quote unquote.
yeah, yeah,
I think in my head, it was probably more getting out of my head and believing in the idea, which I had a really strong belief in it. I think dealing with that, definitely like negotiating the lease was a little bit outside of my comfort zone. But
Mm,
really, for me, it was about finding the team around me or the people and having the confidence to ask for help. So luckily, I had a lot of people around me, and I would find the expert within my network that could help me through each process that I didn't know. So I need, knowing what you know and knowing what you don't know, I think is very crucial.
yeah. Now, does it help? This is going to be kind of a weird question, but does it help, in terms of the meditation that, like the persona that you give out, right? And just, my amateur psychology here, you seem to be very calm, level-headed person. So does that help from the business standpoint of things? When you are forging relationships with different people and what you have to do in running your business.
Yeah, well, I think a calm persona is or a calm state is important for leadership, right? When you're
Yeah,
encountering challenges, you don't want the leader that's just running around, the house is on
exactly.
fire. You want calm, focused, centered decisions, and then confidently moving forward in them. And meditation certainly helps with that.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about running a business in Calgary, Bryce. How has that
Hmm.
been for you? What would you say that some of the benefits are of being a business owner, an entrepreneur in Calgary?
Oh my goodness. Well, I think they're immense. Calgary is a fantastic city. Um, there's, some great disposable income from a lot of the people, well educated,
Yeah,
populace as well. And they really take, I mean, for me personally, in the health and wellness side of things, they really focus on their health and wellness here in Calgary as well. It's a very active people, especially in the winter times, people are still going to fitness studios. There's a lot of access to fitness studios, a lot of education on health and wellness. And we've done really well. I mean, we even opened up in 2016 when there was kind of the downturn in oil because Calgary
yeah,
is very oil centric. We actually, people were worried for me and et cetera. And we did exceptionally well because during those times, people turned to their health and wellness during stressful times as well.
yeah.
So we've had even throughout the pandemic and then after the pandemic, we've been doing incredibly well because I think the news is out that meditation and mindfulness is very important. And I think we saw a lot of the cracks start to show in everyone's health and wellness, myself included, during the pandemic, and
Yeah.
that this is something that needs to be prioritized at all times.
Yeah, and that's become a major issue these days, the mental health side of things, right? And you can't go anywhere without some news report talking about state of mental health in Canada, well, elsewhere as well, in the last couple of years, right?
100%. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's all we have, our bodies and our minds, right?
yeah. That stress too is a killer. It's talk about the beyond the mental side of things. Could you talk a little bit about the physical side of things of being in a healthy state of mind through meditation?
Yeah, well, so I mean, essentially what happens is when we're overwhelmed or anxious, what's happening is we release cortisol, which is a stress chemical, and that's evolved from back in the day. When we're out and we encounter a bear, we release cortisol, it
Yeah,
spikes our adrenaline, and we start to or increases our heart rate, and we get ready to either fight or flight. The problem is nowadays we're so overwhelmed with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, emails, phone calls, text messages
yeah,
that our brains are so overwhelmed that we're releasing cortisol when we get an email. So an email to us is now like a bear, and that doesn't make a lot of sense, objectively. But when we're in it, that's the way it feels. So we release that cortisol, our heart rate goes up. It's just a really harmful chemical.
Yeah.
And what can happen is we start getting addicted to that cortisol. We can start, doom scrolling, as they call it, on Twitter, Instagram, and you're just scrolling and you're getting all these news feeds of how dangerous the world is and et cetera.
Yeah.
And we're in this heightened state and we're releasing cortisol all the time. And that's a chemical that we should not be, we start to get addicted to it. And that's not the chemical we should be addicted to. We should be, releasing dopamine, endorphins, and the good feeling chemicals that we get from meditation, connection with community, exercise. And unfortunately, we're getting hooked to these cortisol chemicals, and it really does start to break down our body and our minds. And that stressful state it's not healthy.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many physical things that happen because of that. But when you're looking at being in Calgary, Bryce, I take it you're from Calgary originally, or no?
Yeah, I was born in Edmonton, then moved to California, but I've been here since high school. I moved back here in high school.
And what did you do before starting Clearfield Oat Spa?
So I was in sales and marketing. So I worked for third-party agencies. So I got to work with really big brands, Microsoft, Kudo, TELUS, probably 50 of the top brands in Canada. And I basically helped execute on their sales and marketing initiatives. So a lot of experiential marketing and sales campaigns. I managed their teams and
Okay.
basically created experiences around that brand that tied to that brand.
Sales can be quite stressful, can't they?
It sure can, for sure.
Yeah. Where do you think the stress comes when in sales? It, does it come from the fact that you have to produce? Like it's a lot of jobs you just you know you just do your job and go your merry way. But in sales, man, if you don't bring in that revenue, like goodbye. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's the metrics, right? Because you're constantly like, well, you know exactly where you should be at any given time, which is a little bit different than kind of a creative field.
Yeah.
But I think yeah, I mean, for me personally, I think a little bit of just the insecurity, right? If you set a goal and you don't hit it, there's the insecurity or the feeling of a failure.
Yeah.
But with more experience in sales, as I started to continue to grow in it, it's just setting a goal, being confident in it, and knowing the steps to get there. Um, but I mean, it can still be as stressful as you make it, I suppose. The
Yeah.
meditation certainly helps in the confidence of like, I'm going to get there. I know how to get there, and just being calm and confident about it.
Yeah. What are you thinking in terms of your business, Bryce? Are you looking at expanding in the future? Where's the growth coming from or going to be in this? Or are you just happy with just what you're doing now?
I mean, I am happy with what I'm doing now, but I do feel the growth is coming. I can't make any announcements right now, but we are certainly looking at continuing to grow. I think the demand for float therapy is growing. The demand for stillness, really, at the end of the day, that's where my passion lies in. Our mission is to help remove pain and anxiety in people's lives, and there's many different therapies that can do that, and float therapy is one of those. And we're going to continue to grow in that area, and I think others in the future here as well.
Okay, then. So running a business and then obviously doing a lot of meditation as well. What are, besides that and maybe family, like, do you have any specific interests and passions, hobbies uh, that you like to spend time with?
Yeah, for sure. Family is obviously very important for me. I have two little boys, so lots of time with them, and that keeps me pretty busy.
Okay, I got to ask you $1 million question then. The two
Yeah.
little boys, have they ever tried meditation?
So actually, well, I mean, we have one 11-month-old and a three and a
Oh,
half year old. So it is a little bit challenging, but actually our 3.5-year-old does do yoga.
oh,
So we don't
cool.
do a lot of screen time with him.
Yeah,
And the only screen time he ever gets is there's this great YouTube for kids, and it's yoga, and it's about 20 minutes or so, and he loves it. I mean, he
interesting.
actually does poses. He's, as calm as he can be and as still as he can be, but he goes through the process and he really understands it. And it's really, really cute to watch as well.
I'm going to come back before I interrupted you to that question about your other hobbies and interests, but I'm just curious, how important do you think it is to, obviously when you have this toddler learning kind of this stuff at an early age, how important do you think it is for all of us, for people to understand, I guess, and to maybe even practice in some way that stillness and meditation in life at a young
Oh,
age, starting at a
I
young
think it's
age.
I think it's crucial because I think at a young age you're developing your emotions, right? And I think
Yeah.
um, keeping kids busy was a very big part of parenting in the past,
Oh, yeah.
and then kind of ignoring emotions to a certain degree. It would just be like busy, busy, busy. You hurt yourself. Like let's distract.
Yeah.
When I think processing emotions is very, very important. Sitting with your emotions, learning what your emotions are, feeling sad, and actually sitting in that and understanding what it is so that it can wash through you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's really, really crucial. And a lot of parenting techniques are starting to turn to that, to allowing children to kind of feel it and move through it. So we try to be as confident and calm with our child as well when he's, he still has meltdowns, of course.
Yeah.
Um, but I think we practice a lot of mindfulness as best as we can,
Yeah.
mindfulness while he's going through that so that he can learn those different emotions and move through them as well.
Excellent. So back and so hobbies, interests, passions, anything else that you have out there that
Yeah, I love playing hockey. I love golf. I love competition and trying to push myself and my body as well. So I love doing that, and I started getting back into kind of working out again and lifting more weights. I used to do a lot of cardio and
uh,
Peloton. I also love, but now I've started to try to get back into lifting a few more weights. Just as I get older, I feel my body isn't as strong as it used to be, so I'm trying to build a little bit more strength for my kids so I can continue to be active for them as well.
so I'm curious, actually, when mentioning competition and stuff like that, do you think the meditation, everybody talks about whether you're an athlete or, even in the work you do, sometimes getting in the zone, right? Do you think meditation helps with that? You, you know,
Absolutely.
like you'll see an athlete, a basketball player just sitting and boom, 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 like 3-point shots continuously, right? It's just like, and I find that myself sometimes when I'm, as a journalist writing, there's certain times I get into a zone and like
Hmm.
end of the day, you wonder, holy crap, how much work
Yeah.
I've done today, right? So you think that's helpful to do stuff like that?
Absolutely. So when you meditate, you enter what's called a theta brainwave state. So when we're active and awake, we're in an alpha state or a beta state. Usually when we're watching TV, we're in an alpha state, which is a relaxed kind of receiving mode state. When we're active and thinking, that's a beta state. And then when you start to meditate, you enter a theta state. So peak athletes actually enter theta states quite frequently because they're so single focused. They're essentially in a meditative state where there's nothing else going on. They're not thinking about groceries. They're not thinking about an email or anything like that. They are single-mindedly focused.
Yeah.
So the more frequently we can put ourselves into a theta state, the more focused we can be and the more calm and confident we can be as well. And ironically, children are actually in a theta state an awful lot, which is a really creative state. So
Uh,
children live in a theta state a lot, and as we get older, we start to,
yeah.
move out of that and aren't in that as often. And that's where meditation can bring us back into that creative. Meditation is very creative as well, which a lot of people don't think of meditation as creative, but it really brings a lot of creativity, and you can be creative in your meditations too, which is really neat.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Bryce, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
It was a fascinating discussion, and I'm looking forward to my own meditation. So,
Amazing.
yeah,
Excellent.
thanks very much. That was Bryce Weeks, who is founder of Clear Float Spa in Calgary. I'm Mario Toneguzzi with Calgary's podcast. I'm managing editor of Canada's podcast. Thanks for joining us today.